Hello, so my SPED talk is going to be on Xamarin Forms with XAML, and essentially Xamarin Forms is a part of Xamarin for defining the user interfaces of apps for iOS, Android all at once, so you can use them across multiple platforms easily. Okay, so first we're going to talk about XAML, and that's kind of what Xamarin Forms runs. So XAML is an extensible application markup language, and essentially it's a markup language used to define user interfaces. And so you can define how everything looks, and then in the background you have like a C# file or .NET, whatever other file you want, and in the background it runs the actual code. And so XAML is pretty much XML, but it has three additional properties that make it really different and useful. And those are the three properties on the screen. Okay, now we have Xamarin Forms. And Xamarin Forms is a framework which uses XAML to define UI in Xamarin. And it's got four main components. It's got pages, layouts, views, and cells. And a page essentially is just the screens you see across your app, so different pages, different screens. Layouts go over pages, and they're containers in the page which you compose different views. And the views are your user interface. Now it's got your labels, your buttons, your text entries, so you put all those inside your layouts. And then cells are a special way to define how each item in a list of items should look, so you can have different cell looks. And on the right here is a typical layout of the app, and we have our view models, our views, and our models. A typical layout of the app. So we have here, this is a page that right here on the right, and so it's just like how you do XML. So right at the top you define it's XML, and then this part is saying here's our Xamarin Forms stuff, and here it's referencing the view models over here. And so the big thing about Xamarin Forms that they emphasize is really great is typically in XML you can't reference resources. It has to be like literal definitions, but in this markup language, in Xamarin Forms, you have bindable properties, which is really useful because when you're making apps, you're going to have a lot of things that are kind of shared and common, and so you want to be able to get those things right away. And so the biggest example I have for you right here, so you have your color key accent, and essentially this is just a variable, but it's defined as an Xamarin property, and so this is one of those special things. So you say this is called accent, and then this is what it is, color, and here's the code. And so down here we can use accent in this static resource, which is saying, hey, this section right here, the background color, use this resource, which is saying it's a bindable property and it's not going to change, so use this color right here. And essentially that's kind of like the big gist of it, is like you can use this and you can generate really easy stuff by using these different static things or referencing, and so you don't have to rewrite the code a bunch, and it's really easy and really easy to read. So over here in app, this is kind of like your general resource directory. So if you need to access stuff that's going to be common in a lot of pages, you would put it in here. And so right here we have our navigation primary color, which is whatever this number is, which is just color. And so it's a key. And so because it's in the app section, I can just call it anywhere. And so here I can just say here, navigation primary, and I could do that, and it just changes the color for me. And that's kind of the thing about bindable properties. And it doesn't have to be like in a general like app folder. It can be in a lot of other. It can reference other classes or other pages without needing to be inherited. And another example is here we have a button down the bottom. That's this button right here. And you just put it in where you want it, the text, and then you say when this button is pushed, do this command, and it's saying bind it to whatever this is. And so if we look over here in the C# file, it's when you first start the page, you're saying do the about view model, and so it's creating this model right here in the background of the page. And so in the about view model, it's saying the title equals about, and then it's saying if you have this property the property is just saying do this command and then saying do this. And so essentially when you start the page, you're binding everything to this property, and so that way when you push this button, it does this thing. And that's just kind of like a basic rundown of Xamarin. There's just a lot of stuff on it, and you don't even have to use Xamarin Forms. There's another option that you can just use native Android and iOS. You can just do native UI development and then just have the shared C# code for the background, which is easier if you already know them, but if you want to just do a really common look, then this is the way to go.